country deserves.
Brendan Burns.
Chair, and I'm pleased to follow on from the Minister's sophistry in respect of this bill and trying to pretend that this is going to deliver for the environment. This is a donut piece of legislation for a donut agency. There's a thin perimeter of staffing and cash and a great big hole in the middle of it. It actually should be called the Environment Projection Authority Bill because it actually doesn't deliver. It might hold some hope, but it's certainly not delivering for the environment. And for the ministers to suggest that the EEZ legislation can't be protected by the EPA, well, that differs from what he told the Select Committee back in June of last year, and this is as reported from a Select Committee news, where he said that a report on the issue of EEZ would be ready in August, and his preference was, quote, to have that EEZ legislation and the EPA legislation as one package, because it is our view that the EPA will be the proper place for regulating environmental activities. So here we come back to this donut bill, this donut piece of legislation, this donut agency with a great big gaping hole in the middle of it, and that is the EEZ, Antarctica, and a whole range of other environmental activities which should be the subject of scrutiny and involvement by this agency and which are missing in action. And that's because the Minister couldn't deliver, and that's because his cabinet colleagues want the growth. They want to see the seabed mined. They want to see the seabed mined, and they do not want any agency to stand in their way, because the growth agenda is going to take precedence no matter what. And the Minister might have thought he might be able to turn them around, but actually this bill is testimony to the fact that he's failed miserably in that task, because it does not hold out even to the promises that he projected he would be delivering on. It is an abject failure in his responsibilities as the steward for the environment on behalf of the government. He's failed to deliver on it, and it's there in black and white from what he was telling the Select Committee, the very Select Committee that considered this bill, to what's actually come through. And to talk about how you shouldn't have spelled out the functions and objectives of the EPA, well, what a nonsense. And I go back to the model that he cited himself in the past of the EPA from the United States, which was set up in the 1970s, I think. It had 6 goals. They were around protecting and improving air quality so we can breathe it safely, reducing greenhouse gas intensity, to ensure drinking water is safe, to restore and maintain oceans.
In the 70s,
that's right, and it's as valid and more valid today as it was in the 1970s, because issues like climate change were barely perceptible in the 1970s. Now they're critical issues that have to be faced, and you are not delivering an agency which was supposed to be the flagship for your environmental stewardship, and in fact what you've delivered is a dinghy, not a flagship. This is just a tiny little vessel floating on an ocean which it has no responsibility for. It has no responsibility for the oceans, and that was going to be a core component of what you were going to do to improve our environmental record. And here we have the part 2 of the bill, and the objectives and functions of the EPA are so limited as to be breathtaking in their audacity. There's absolutely no reference to environmental outcomes, no reference to objectives, no goal setting, no vision. There's nothing in this bill which says this is the agency that you can put confidence and faith in, that if you've had concerns in the past about our record as a nation in terms of our environmental stewardship, the EPA was going to be the agency we could trust to deliver. And it's just not there. It's simply not even there in the bill as a reference. There's no capacity for anybody to stand up and say to this minister, you set out these goals and objectives, because he did that with his blue-green agenda 4 or 5 years ago, the great big bright hope for the environment under the blue-greens. And all I can say in respect of that is blue-green is actually the most toxic cyanobacteria that you can find in New Zealand's waterways today, and it's a very fitting analogy, because here we have a situation where that blue-green agenda, which was going to deliver a functioning EPA with high environmental outcomes, not delivered. A Ministry of Sustainable Development, not delivered. And we're coming to an EPA which is going to be toothless, it's going to be powerless, it's going to be budgetless, it's simply transferring over the functions and duties of IRMA and of HASNO and about 10 other staff, most of whom are going to be involved in fast-tracking motorway projects and the like. Where are the people to actually deliver the environmental objectives that you spelled out so boldly 4 or 5 years ago, Minister?
Louise